5 now.
Awesome, thank you. I now declare the meeting open at 10 minutes past 6. This is the Community Culture, Arts and Sport Committee, the first of its kind. I'll call for attendance. We have Councillor Jonik, Mayor Harding and Councillor Kunzelman all in attendance this morning. I'd ask anyone to declare any matters of interest, any agenda items. If there is none, we'll move on to the first item. So item number 1, COVID-19 Social and Economic Monitoring Report. I just invite the relevant council officer down to give us a brief overview.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mayor Harding, councillors, CEO. My name is Miff Jagger. I am a Senior Social Policy Analyst with Ipswich City Council's Performance Branch. The report before you this morning is concerning a monitoring and reporting process that has been initiated within Council to help estimate and monitor the impact of COVID-19 and related restrictions on the Ipswich community. As you know, COVID-19 and its related restrictions continue to have wide-ranging impacts on social and economic activity in Ipswich, as it does across Australia and the world. The attached monitoring report is the second to be prepared for Council's COVID-19 Human, Social and Economic Sub-Working Group, as it builds its evidence base around changes in the local community and emerging community recovery needs. The monitoring report was finalised on the 28th of July and captures data relevant to a reporting period between mid-May and early July of this year. The recommendations today for the committee are for Council to receive and note the contents of the attached monitoring report, which we will continue to prepare on a monthly basis for Council's information purposes, but happy to take questions.
Based on the report provided, have we got any questions from the committee? No. Thank you very much.
No problems.
So I will seek a mover for the recommendation that we receive and note. Thank you, Mayor Harding, and seconded by Councillor Kunzelman. I'd like to open up for any discussion.
Councillor Fickner, I guess just to note that this is doing the social and economic monitoring as part of, I guess, the disaster management, process that's represented by the state in regards to how our city responds to the impacts of COVID.
Awesome, thank you. Any further discussion? Perfect. Well, we'll take that one to the vote. To receive and note. And it's unanimous. The vote is passed. Thank you. Moving on, and Miff remains at the lectern. Item number 2 is the proposed Children, Young People and Families Policy. Thanks, Miff.
Thank you, Chair. I've stayed here because of agenda item number 2. This is a report concerning a proposed new policy titled Children, Young People and Families Policy for Council to consider. The proposed policy addresses our current corporate plan commitment, which is to ensure the needs of our city's growing child and youth population are incorporated in a child and youth friendly community policy, with closer alignment between this policy and the guiding principles of a child-friendly city. The proposed new policy that's before you today has been shaped by a robust research and consultation process, and the policy scope has been broadened to recognise the important role that families and caregivers play in helping children and young people thrive in Ipswich. This proposed policy will guide the future work of Council with a contemporary and a strategic statement of commitment. It will also be a key consideration for Council in the development of the new corporate plan, if it is adopted, and as part of the annual planning process for Council. Importantly to note, adopting the proposed Children, Young People and Families policy will require Council to repeal its existing youth policy, which was adopted in 2015 and last reviewed in 2015. However, I will note that this policy development process has involved a review of that existing policy, and the intent of that policy has been reflected in the proposed new policy. Recommendations for Council today are that the policy titled Youth Policy, attached in Attachment 1, be repealed, that the proposed policy titled Children, Young People and Families, as detailed in Attachment 2, be adopted, that the contents of the policy development brief that accompanies this report, detailed in Attachment 3, be noted by Council. And it's also presented to Council to note that the 2020-2021 budget has allocated $10,000 towards launch events that we will hold in October, which demonstrate a strong alignment between this policy and its adoption by Council.
I'd like to open the floor up to any questions. Ms Jagger?
Through the chair. Ms Jagger, just going through this, so thank you for the report and thank you for the workshop that you and your team conducted with the council officers in developing this. Thank you very much. And I know you've done a lot of work before we even were sworn in, so thank you. Just going into, I guess, Attachment 3, which is going into more of the, I guess, the programs.
Yep.
When we did our workshop, there was a lot of discussion. You know, we have, I guess, a family-friendly city here and a child-friendly city, and knowing our there's fast growth happening here in Ipswich. What can we do as a council, I guess, in these activities? I guess we'd like to see a focus on youth employment.
Mm-hmm.
How will the program address that?
So I think with the adoption of the policy, we would then be looking to prepare an implementation program and align that with the corporate plans development and identification of strategic themes. Certainly within that, I mean, we talked as part of that workshop around what Council's role is in terms of what we manage, what we support others to do and what we advocate for. And certainly that employment and increasing employment opportunities in Ipswich was something that came up around an advocacy priority. So certainly we would be looking, as we develop an implementation program out of this policy, to have a focus on employment.
Thank you, Ms Jagger.
I guess, Ms Jagger, I look forward to developing the implementation with you and just echoing the sentiment of the Mayor. Thank you for including us in the back end of that process. Although it was swiftly for the elected representatives, we very much feel included, and this is a part of who we are and moving forward. And it's something that particularly resonates with me, that the focus on where we take the next generation of our city. I guess the only question I have for you is, what was the biggest shake-up between this and the policy that we're looking to repeal today?
I think probably the biggest shake-up between the two is that the youth policy is a specific focus for young people in Ipswich. We have, based on that corporate plan commitment and looking at the fact that children, young people and families are a central unit, essentially. The biggest shake-up is that we've broadened the scope between what was originally a youth policy and what is now a children, young people and families policy. The statement of commitment is strategic and overarching and does not, I believe, detract from the importance of our growing youth population. Certainly by supporting this policy development with a policy brief and having the evidence base that sits behind it, is there to help inform Council's decision-making processes in the best interests of children, young people and families independently or collectively, as the case may be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
No further
Ms.
questions?
Jagger. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's perfect. Well, I'll seek a mover on recommendations A through D. Councillor Jonick, and a seconder for that one. Thank you, Mayor Harding, for seconding that. I now would like to open up for any discussion. Thank you, Councillor.
As Deputy Chair, I fully support this and note the alignment with the corporate plan and look forward to implementing it. And I'm particularly interested in this Council's intention that we should create conditions where young people want to stay in Ipswich. And I would like to really support that.
I agree. Thank you.
Just through the chair, just highlighting the advancing young people through 18 to 24 is significant, and I commend you for adding that in, the strengthening the training and qualifications to adapt courses that are actually needed for our industry in Ipswich. I'm glad that is highlighted.
Yeah.
Thank you. So without any...
Sorry.
Harding? No, that's okay.
Thank you, Councillor Fichtner. I guess just reiterating, I'm just letting people know that some of the discussions that we had when we were doing the workshop, our real focus on making Ipswich as family friendly as possible, and how do we address some of the challenges, because we will have a lot of young people coming into employment, to making sure that they're as skilled and have as many opportunities as possible. So as a council, we need to make sure that we do everything we can to bring local jobs here, so there are jobs for people. When that we have the transport links like the Ipswich to Springfield Central Transport and public transport for young people. And I guess when we first were sworn in, we had a briefing from Westmoreton Health, and they certainly went through with us some of the challenges we need to how can we partner with health and schools to increase knowledge on nutrition and exercise and mental health and things like that. So I'll be really to see. I know council's not the be all and end all for this side, but what we can do working with state and federal and community groups in this area is something that was discussed at length in our workshops.
Yeah, I agree. And although it's not explicitly named in any of our committees, I think that health is a very important overarching objective of ours to improve the livability of our city. So yeah, I definitely piggyback on that one. So without any further discussion, we'll take that one to the vote. All those in favour? And the vote is unanimous. Moving on to item number 3, community funding programs. We have the relevant council officer in the room. Come up and just give us a quick overview. Thank you, Mr. Poll.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, Mayor, councillors. My name is Ben Poll. I'm the General Manager for Community, Cultural and Economic Development. So the report presented is a summary of community funding programs, in particular just to provide awareness to the group for the round of funding support that closed 31st of July. It's a receive and note report. It also aims to provide an awareness of the type of funding support programs available to the community. So we've explicitly listed those programs in the report with an aim to make that publicly available for people to understand what kind of funding support programs they might be able to access. I'll make the point that this council adopted a new program of funding support in the July round. The purpose of that was following both internal and external review and audit of our previous funding programs. We developed what we believe to be a more efficient and effective and valuable program of funding for the community. The initial response to this new program, which is detailed in the report, has been positive. We've received an increase in the number of applications. Similarly, under this new framework, we're actually able to turn around our responses to applications from what would normally be a 6 to 8 week period to more like 4 weeks. So some of the indicators that we had hoped to demonstrate an improved community support funding program are actually demonstrating elements of success already. So happy to receive any questions on the report.
Open the floor up to any questions. I guess I just have one, and you cite that there have been more applications received. By that, do you mean that it's easier for people to apply for programs? Are we getting better at promoting our grants program? What are the crux of that increase in applications?
Thank you, Chair. Look, the anecdotal feedback from the officers who manage this program is the applicants have found the application process easier and therefore are completing more applications and more willing to submit applications. That's the early anecdotal feedback.
Just a comment, I'm certainly out in the community getting very favourable comment on the program, very favourable. And part of that favourable response is the fact that you gave us permission to distribute that phone number where people could get direct assistance. And that's making a huge difference, I think.
It's good to hear.
So I took you at your word, and I've been publicising that number, and I believe there's a great deal of satisfaction.
That's great.
I agree.
Through the Chair, if I may just add an additional comment. We refer to the standard programs. There are, this council adopted some COVID response programs as well for the community. And it may be an opportunity for council to promote that those programs are still open and available for submissions, and they'll be open until the 31st of August. Currently, there are two programs. One relates to operational costs, so community sporting groups are able to submit for operational costs. We're undersubscribed in that program based on where we thought we might like to be, so an opportunity to promote that one, as well as there is a community and sporting group, what we called a repair and maintenance, so able to actually receive funds for capital expenditure, if you want to put it that way. And again, we're probably undersubscribed in that program as well.
And sorry, just through the chair, is that still open until the 31st?
31st of August, both of those programs.
Through the chair, correct me if I'm wrong if we could bring up here or it's in the economic one, but the one I know that Councillor Johnny worked very closely on to help small businesses, up to $1,000. I know that closed on the 14th of August. Is it appropriate to give the update here or in the economic?
I was planning on also updating that fund there, but that has closed.
Yes. Was that oversubscribed or undersubscribed or?
Currently undersubscribed, so
Yes.
we received 100 submissions to a total of $88,000. So there's $120,000 underspent in that particular
We
fund.
may need to just.
You do another round.
Yeah.
So we're better off assessing, issuing, and then doing another round on those sort of things.
Just through the chair, yeah, I know that the guidelines had to adapt for the need with that, so
Yep.
yeah, the feedback will be used to go for the other round, I'm assuming.
Any further questions for Mr. Powell? Thank you. So I'll seek a mover on the recommendation.
Oh, so before I, if I may, Chair, I would seek to, I guess, amend, whether we look at doing a round two of those. I just sit there going, there's a lot of businesses hurting with COVID, so we know that about, of the 200,000 we allocated, was it 200,000, Councillor, for the Chair, Councillor Johnnick, for the small business COVID
Funding program? Yeah.
and I think it looks like about 88,000 has probably going to be allocated, depending on the process. So we have money sitting there to help businesses. May I move for a recommendation that we note and receive this. That's A, and then for B, for us to look at a round two. And I guess through the chair, I'll ask Councillor Johnnick how she would like to do that as well, if there was.
Yeah, definitely, because the funding is still there and it's still active, basically. Or it's closed now, but we're not even 50% through what the actual funding was there to achieve. So I know that the guidelines had to be adapted significantly in relation to the inventory side of that particular funding. So maybe perhaps moving forward with that tranche 2 of that funding, we could communicate that more, because that seemed to be the greater need.
Okay.
So yeah, the recommendation that council implement.
Round two.
Round two.
I know it's for, was it called the
What's the program
COVID-19
called?
Small Business
Small business.
Program?
Small business.
Support, Small Business Support Fund.
Maybe it could be round two funding round. Sorry, round two. Oh, yeah, okay, that's all right. Round two funding arrangement. That's right.
I think we're still going to have businesses suffer from the
I
impacts of
agree,
COVID.
yeah. And if there's money left in the kitty, that makes sense.
Question, may I ask a question of Councillor Johnny?
Yeah, of course.
It's a good idea for people to get good advice to survive, to use that money to get good advice to survive. That's your message, isn't it?
Yeah, that's correct,
Yes.
through the chair. But I guess the need on the ground, there, and the feedback was there was a lot of grants in place for that particular need as well. But then what we heard from our community loud and clear was that it was just basically that initial need for inventory and broadening the definition of what that was for people to continue to operate.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think opening up for round two, it allows people to have a breather. Those who may not have had time initially to apply for this grant, it gives them a little bit of extra time to really think about it. It gives us more time as an organisation to highlight the fact that there is still, we're still receiving applications for these grant programs as well.
And Chair, on Monday night, Councillor Kunzelman and I were at the Willowbank Area Residents Group and we're speaking to some people who are business owners and they weren't aware of this. So I went to send them the details and I could see that it actually closed last week.
Yep.
So this would, I think, help as well. May I ask the CEO a question? I'd like to put a time frame on this. What would you advise the organisation can...
Well, what
Open
we
up
should
and-
do is review the what's happened and see whether we can change the guidelines. But there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to have something out within a couple of weeks,
Yeah, I think...
and then run it for 3 weeks or so, and then close it. You know, it's a successful program is actually one that sort of comes in that sort of ballpark. That if you get no applications, then you're way offline, and if you're dramatically oversubscribed, you've got some challenges. Something like this, where you're 50% subscribed, you can then go out again, tidy it up a little bit more, and target it better. Isn't a bad outcome actually.
And this is our opportunity to delegate to you once,
Yeah.
If council resolves next week, we want round 2.
Yeah.
You'll just make that
Happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chair, I guess if we could put a time, have had it to go back out in mid-September or something like that.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
So that,
CEO.
so recommendation B that council implement a round 2 funding arrangement for a period. I'll take it for the period. Implement a round 2 funding arrangement for the Small Business Support Fund mid-September.
You want a
Am I allowed to-
specific date there, Mayor, or would you like?
I'll deliberately leave it as mid-September to give some,
Yep.
to give the council office an indication of that it needs to get out.
And just through the chair, it might indeed sway back to advisory services given the time of year, and given people are looking over their financial statements and then probably looking at different other
Yeah.
grants and needing expert advice. So it's good that we can adapt to the need.
Yeah, and I guess we need to keep pushing the word that the community operational support funding and the community repair and replacement fund is still undersubscribed. So I'm getting, and I know that I've spoken to quite a few community groups this week that intend to reach that 31st August deadline. So, and I guess we'll revisit that when it comes as well. And if that remains undersubscribed, it probably means that it won't come to committee for another month now. And if it closes on the 31st of August, I guess we need to organise our thoughts around what we do in terms of redistribution of that underspent money potentially. CEO, do you think that that's a fair time frame? So we'll have time to assess the applications at the close of the 31st of this month, and then we'll revisit committee next month, and then council ordinary. So we're probably looking at an October round for potentially the underspend of the 2 COVID programs that close this month.
Yeah, and the sporting organisation one may well be one that's we can might require some more work and might require some specific community consultation. I think there's a lot of power in that particular program, but it's a matter of getting people aware and able to be committed to it.
Yep.
But there's some real potential in that, but it might need to be reworked after it closes.
Okay, sounds good.
So I guess the question is, one option is, you could give a carte blanche for us to rework it, or you could consider its impact at the September round.
Yep, I think that's the way to go. We'll consider its impact in September,
Okay.
and then go forward in October. So, Mayor, are you moving?
I'd like to
A and
move.
B?
I'd like to move the 2 recommendations there. Thank you,
Awesome.
Chair.
Do we
I'll
have a
second, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Kunzelman. Seconding that. Any further discussion? Excellent. We'll take that to the vote. All those in favour? And it's unanimous. Thanks, Vicky. So moving on to item number 4, new Ipswich Central Library status update report. We have the relevant council officer come down. Let's go. Thank
Chair. Good morning, councillors. My name's Matt Pascoe, and I'm currently the Customer Experience Manager for the Libraries and Customer Services branch. So the report submitted is a status update on the Ipswich Central Library project motoring along down at the new CBD redevelopment on Nicholas Street. The report as submitted covers off on the current schedule and provides some information around the offering in the new facility. We're lucky that the construction company have delivered us the keys a little bit early. I was just down there during the week. And that's hopefully going to allow us to accelerate our program a little bit to get in the facility. We're currently looking at being on site and able to operate in mid to late November. But as noted in the report, that is contingent on some of the external works in the surrounds around the library.
I'll open the floor up for any questions of Mr. Pascoe.
Comment? Through you, Chair. As a library lover, a bibliophile, I think, what's not to like here? This is just amazing. But I'm also particularly, given the brief of this committee, pleased with the number of meeting rooms that will be available. There is some suggestion in the community that there's a shortage of meeting rooms that are free or cheap. And also we have the training computers, and that ties in with this Senior Week's Be Connected promotion as well. So what's not to like?
I guess, Mr. Pascoe, the question I have is, it pertains to the logistics of moving from the old Ipswich Central Library to the new Ipswich Central Library. Should we explicitly look at maybe tightening up some dates around those? I'm not sure if that report will go to the CBD redevelopment committee, or will the opening date come to our committee here?
I don't know, Chair. I was going to ask something similar of if this overlaps with the CBD redevelopment committee.
Yeah, and I guess I seek advice of Chief. Because I was specifically looking at the logistics of moving across and where do we flesh out all of the potential issues associated with that, locking in a potential date based on the current state of affairs down there on the construction site. You know, what we consider appropriate, what are we happy to do, and I did discuss with Mr. Poll earlier this week with regards to potential soft opening in November and an official opening in January potentially. So I just wanted to know if this was the correct committee where we discuss those, very specific inner workings of this decision, or whether that's a job for Chair Councillor Doyle of the CBD Redevelopment Committee.
I think it's both. Clearly, what goes on inside the library is the responsibility of this committee. The broader fabric is the CBD Redevelopment Committee, which will meet later this afternoon. I think there's many moving parts in this. I think we were all there on last Friday and saw just how special the public space is, and obviously the potential of the library itself. It's not just the construction program. There's obviously an ongoing public health issue rolling as well. I think we will probably be playing this a little bit by ear, just seeing how things develop. But I think there is some merit in a soft opening and an official opening. But having said that, every library I've been involved in opening has always had a fanfare based opening, including the one at Rosewood.
If I may suggest, Chair, I appreciate that organisationally the council would have an area that's looking after the CBD redevelopment, and now that we've had the what was the milestone we reached back on the 6th of August? The topping out and sort of the handover. I understand organisation that probably it's handed over to now to yourself, Mr. Pascoe, to play with the library and have the joy of fitting that out. But I guess from our committee perspective, it maybe sit better with the CBD redevelopment, I guess. But
Yeah, so yeah, I guess just noting my comments that I'd be very interested to be part of that conversation when it arises, and thank you for the report. Is there any further questions for Mr. Pascoe? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I now seek a mover on the recommendation that the report concerning
I'll
the
move.
status of the Ipswich Central Library construction, commissioning and activation be received and contents be noted. Moved by Councillor Kunzelman, seconded by Councillor Jonnet. Thank you very much. Do we have any further discussion around this?
I think the only thing I might share was to point out the fact that obviously at this stage we're planning for a shutdown of our library here from the Monday the 19th of October to Friday the 30th of October. It looks like to that transition at this stage, and I'm sure that the organisation will do a lot of communications around that, because I know that our libraries are real focal points in our communities. That's probably the only thing I was going to raise, Chair.
Yep. Mr. Poll earlier this week had a few really great insights for me in terms of how that works, who misses out in those situations, how long we close the library for as a whole, like to have access to a central library here in Ipswich. How long will we be without? So we were discussing all of those, all of the aspects and moving parts. But it was alluded to that we're going to try and have as few people fall through the gaps as possible. If there are people in our community, Mr. Poll recommends that we keep computers at the existing library location so that people will always have internet access if they desperately need it while the transition is happening. So I understand there's lots of moving parts to this and there's lots of brainstorming going on behind the scenes. So I feel pretty confident that the organisation is well across this, and we'll get to read a pretty paper in a few weeks' time that tells us exactly what the plan is. So any further discussion? Thank you. I'd like to take that to the vote. All those in favour? And that's unanimous. And as that was the last agenda item of this committee, I now declare the meeting closed at 10:38 a.m.
The next meeting started at